The Weiskirger case gives us an example of something that happens quite a bit, as we've seen at least of late in our cases, that the trial court offered the jury an improper instruction, that it offered an instruction that would have been appropriate prior to the adoption of the model penal code. So in Weiskirger, we are looking at a claim of entrapment, and the trial court instructed the jury on what is called a subjective version of the entrapment defense. So let's unpack all that. What exactly is entrapment? Well, we know under the Pennsylvania statute that entrapment occurs either when a police officer or someone, in the prosecutorial policing arena tells you that a particular act is not a crime, and that's not that often, or that a police officer, prosecutor, in that person in that arena induces you to commit a crime that you otherwise wouldn't. Now, this is when it becomes a little bit complicated. When we look at the subjective version of that standard, we ask whether the police have induced this particular person to commit a crime that particular person has not shown any predisposition to commit. So, let's say that the police officer poses as a drug addict who is going through withdrawal symptoms and begs the person to get them drugs illegally, and says, I'm going to die if you don't give me these drugs, and I'll give you $5. Please get me whatever unlawful drug that's required. I'm going to die. If the defendant had previously sold drugs, then under a subjective view, then this person would not have been improperly induced to commit the crime because the defendant would have shown a predisposition to the crime of selling drugs. Under an objective view, what we ask is simply, have the police gone too far? Have you done something that would induce an innocent person? Have you done something that would induce a person who does not have a predisposition to commit this particular crime to do it? Are the techniques of the police too outrageous? And we'll look in later cases that you'll examine where the courts have examined claims of outrageousness and in fact concluded that what the police have done in these instances is just going too far. Have they knowingly played off of the defendant's weaknesses? Have they badgered the defendant into committing this crime? Have they given the defendant something that he or she otherwise just couldn't obtain? I'll give you this thing that you could otherwise never get if you'll commit this crime. We'll see those examples. But what's important to take away from the Weiskirger case is that we are looking here at whether we're examining an objective or subjective standard. I've never liked that terminology, but it's used, so you need to get a little bit comfortable with it. It's okay if you don't like hearing it. It's okay if you find this kind of off-putting, strange, convoluted language. I'm in that same boat. But when you hear it, just ask, what's the additional step? What's the thing that's being explained under each test? Under an objective test, we're asking simply, did the police go too far? Should the police ever be allowed to play on someone's sensibilities, to play on their weaknesses, to play on their friendship, to harass or repeatedly beg someone to commit a crime? Is that okay? Have they done that to the extent we're not comfortable with that kind of police tactic in a sting operation? In the subjective test, we ask, have they done that badgering, that begging, that cajoling, that playing off of weaknesses to a person who is not predisposed to commit the crime? Have they done something inappropriate? Have they overly tried? Have they really worked hard to convince someone to commit a crime who would not otherwise have committed the crime? Is the person essentially innocent? Have they done this to a person who is not inclined to commit this crime otherwise. The one looks at what they've done. The subjective test looks at the question of have they done that inappropriate tactic to someone who's not predisposed to committing that crime. And Weiskirger says Pennsylvania has the objective test. Under the objective test, we only look at what the police did, and it's a deterrent analysis. We say we don't want the police engaging in this kind of sting operation tactic. And so when they do, we're not going to give them the benefit of it. So they won't do it in the future. If you're at all familiar with the exclusionary rule in criminal procedure, the idea that if unlawfully obtained evidence is seized by the police, then they can't use it because we want to deter that kind of seizure in the future. This notion of entrapment is very consistent with that. We want to deter this kind of police conduct in the future. So if the police do this to anyone, whether that's someone who's predisposed to this type of criminal conduct that's being cajoled or not, we're not going to give the police the benefit of the conviction because we want that kind of conduct to stop. So short answer to long explanation, the Weiskirger case announces that Pennsylvania uses the objective test for the defense of entrapment.